Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Justin. I've been really looking forward to this. I booked this like 2 months ago, and yesterday I'm looking at the calendar. It's like, it's here. It's here. It's happening. I'm very excited to be here.
We finally arrived. And it's funny because I remember when you booked it, I was like, why'd you book it so far out? Like, what was the
I
thought
had
process
things to
there?
do. I had things to do. I was going to be out of town for podcast movement in August, and I was doing a launch in August. So I'm like, well, I could either give myself the space and just pretend or just tell myself that Justin is not going to say no if I book this for when I can. Because you have that scarcity mindset going like all the time. And you're like, wait, but if I don't book it right now, when he actually wants me to be on the show, then maybe he won't want me later. And so I'm like, what if I just ask for what I need
There you
and
go.
see if that works? And it did. And here we are.
And you didn't even go to podcast movement.
And I ended up not going because I got COVID.
Yeah.
I know my husband got COVID. I am in bed, and he comes into the room and he sits down. He's like, "So I have COVID. So you're not going to Dallas?" And to tell you the truth, as I thought I was gonna be more upset than I actually was. It was actually felt good about, okay, I'm gonna stay and take care of my family. It just felt right to prioritize it. So I got on the phone. I got my money back for the hotel and for the
Oh, that's
flight,
great.
and so yeah, that's what happened. But I ended up, yeah, not going.
Look, I talk about it often on the show. I'm not a podcast movement fan. I
Yeah,
like Podfest where we met.
Fest
And
is
so
yay.
Podfest is great. And the different and nothing particularly against podcast movement. It's just not my vibe. Like podcast movement
Yeah,
is large and controversial now and all these other things. And now Podfest is a family. Like I feel like every time I go to Podfest, you meet great people like you. And this last go around, I met so many new amazing people like you and Jerry McNamara and just amazing humans. And I was like, look, that's good enough for me. Like one
yeah.
big podcast event for me a year is good. There's a couple of local ones that I go to from time to time or speak at. And that's my own opinion. Look, don't hate me, don't at me, don't do those things, people.
Yeah,
Just,
don't send me angry DMs. I actually went to podcast movement back in 2019, and it was my first experience going
is that
to a.
Philadelphia, that one?
No, that was in Dallas, same
Okay.
place. And I had such an amazing time. I didn't know any other conferences. I just went, and I like going to conferences by myself. I don't, because when you go with other people, then you're like getting together for lunch and for dinner and matching your schedules, and then you end up not meeting as many people. So I went by myself, and I met people that changed my life. Like the course of my business changed because I went to that conference. I wouldn't be talking about small audiences and engagement right now. My account, Your Engagement Coach, would not exist if I hadn't gone to podcast movement. I had met the people that I did in that conference. So I'm like, okay, I need to do this again. And then 2020 came. So I bought my VIP ticket like the day I came back from podcast movement. Like, that was amazing. We'll do this again. Then 2020 comes. They don't do the conference. I moved my ticket to 2021. 2021 comes. I'm still not comfortable going. So I moved it to 2022. 2022 comes. My husband gets COVID. So these people think that I'm a joke at this point, but they let me actually move my ticket to 2023. So maybe I'll see people in 2023.
That's great.
And this was my first year. This was my first year at Podfest, which was just a party. It was amazing. And it was
Yeah.
great. Like, it was great to meet you. It was great to meet so many good people. So I walked away with a really like warm spot for Podfest.
Yeah, it's interesting when let's talk about events for a second. Like I told you,
Okay.
I had no plan as to where this was going because I knew we could really kind of dive into anything. And we're going to talk about your niche and how incredible it is and how many people need it. We're going to talk about that. But when it comes to live events, it's something that I fell in love with back in 2017, 2016, I think was like my first big live event where I went, I was uncomfortable, didn't know anybody. And then 2019, I hosted my own first live event. And it's kind of spun from there, but I fell in love with that idea of going to an event, meeting new people. And I mean, talk about people that, Adam Shively was somebody I met at that event in 2016, and he's still one of my
I love
really good
Adam.
friends to this day.
Yeah.
Oh no, I knew Pablo. Pablo was a fan of the podcast, and then he ended up reaching out. We've become friends since then. But you talk about these individuals, and the only time I ever see him are at these events. But we talk in between, and we get to build those relationships. Now, was Podcast Movement your first event, period, or your first podcast event?
My first event in my business, my first event, period. In corporate, obviously, I went to conferences and I was the organizer of the Hispanic Forum conference for General Electric and like things like that. But this was my first like official event. This for podcasters, but also like a big conference because I had been to events planned by other people, by entrepreneurs, right? Like something a little bit smaller, so a little bit more nichey. This was my first big conference. And I just want to say, like, I met Pablo at the first podcast movement, and we ended
Awesome.
up like becoming like fast friends. It was like when he and I got together, we met at a VIP room. This is not just a random story. I hope what people get out of this story is that when you go to these conferences, this is how connections happen. So Pablo Gonzalez, I was sitting next to him at a table in the VIP room, and the conversation in the table kind of died down. So I turned to him like, "Hi, I'm Ina." She extended my hand out. "Hi, I'm Ina. What's your name?" And he's Pablo. So he's like, "Hi, I'm Pablo." And we ended up talking for like 90 minutes just sitting there, right? And Pablo will tell you himself, he when he goes to these places, to these conferences, it's not about the workshops and the learning and everything. It's like, how many people can I meet and how many amazing experiences can I have with them? And after that, he invited me to his retreat in North Carolina, right? So I got to do like an even more intimate thing with him and a few other people. We got to practice our TED Talks, right? Like it was amazing. But yeah, ever since I found out that you were doing an event, that you have events, I'm like, okay, I need to be there. I was like one of the first people to come and tell you, like, I need to be at your event and I need to plan my 2023 around it. So you need to tell me when it's happening so I can put it in there. And then I'm like, okay, and Justin, I want to be an intern at your event because I want to learn how you do it. Because I do see myself hosting a live event at some point, but I have no idea when or how this would happen. So I'm like, I want to learn as much about it as I
You
can.
know, it's so funny that you say that because so many people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to do an event too." And usually my response to them is a very quick, "Don't do it." Like there's so much that goes into it, so many moving parts, so many potentials of losing your savings, like all these things. But you're somebody that I would say absolutely go do it, right? And I say that because of your energetic personality, your ability to attract people. If you're that kind of person, then it makes sense. The hardest thing to do is put butts in the seats, especially the first one, because
Right.
you have no proof of success. You have no examples of what it's going to be like. All it is in your head, right? And I remember in
Yeah.
2019 when I did my first event, I was like, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. It's going to be a rock concert. Like it was all in my head,
Yeah.
but it was this beautiful thing in my head that I was able to kind of put down and make it reality. And I feel like that you're somebody who could do that. So from the live event standpoint, yes, you should absolutely do it. I would be happy to help wherever I can. And so where I'm at, you're obviously coming to the immersion in February.
Yeah.
And that's something that is an
Same.
invite only event. It is smaller. It's more retreaty, but not quite retreaty.
Mhm.
Something kind of a newer concept. Again, selling a new concept, right?
Can't wait
Um,
to see it.
yeah, and so we'll see if the big event comes back. We talked about this before. I was like, I think I'm going to do it. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the immersion and the success of that, and then we'll go from there. But let's dive into a little bit. Like you mentioned, you went to Podcast Movement, and your whole
Mhm.
entire business, your whole entire concept now came from it. What were you doing before that?
I had a podcast called Trailblazing Out of Corporate Life, which is still out there, and I'm extremely proud of it. I made it to 100 episodes on that podcast, where I was helping people get out of corporate by starting their own businesses. So this had been maybe like 2 years in the making. I quit my job in 2018, and I tried different things. They were all stepping stones into where I am now. But at the time that I was going to Podcast Movement, I had just, I think I had just finished. No, I was still in the thick of it, in the thick of trailblazing out of corporate life, and I met a certain individual by the name of Kevin Schmidlin, who is the host of the Grow the Show podcast and the host of the Grow the Show Accelerator. And a year later, so I'm here helping people get out of corporate. I have an amazing program. It's called Be Found. It's no longer available, but an amazing program called Be Found, which I had a very specific goal to make it an evergreen program where new entrepreneurs were going to learn how to establish the foundations of their business. And then I would make their website on the other side. Because at the time, I was a WordPress expert. I'll get you your business online. So this was a container where I'm giving you your business in a box, right? Because my audience at the time, they're like, I need to be taken seriously out there, so I need a website. And I'm like, okay, well, I know how to make websites. You want a website? Let me show you the business steps that you need to take. You're not hiring me by the hour. I need to teach you what you're going to put on the website so that you don't waste your money and waste your time when you haven't even figured out what your business is. So we did that. It was called Be Found, and it was an amazing program. This was the program that helped me get to 6 figures in my business within the first 2 years. And then I went to Podcast Movement the year before. A year later, I'm still selling this program. And Kevin, this, Grow the Show podcaster, he puts a message up on Facebook saying, I'm going to do a podcast accelerator, right? So if you want to monetize your podcast, come. And I'm like, well, I've had, I've been doing trailblazing our corporate life for a while, but I'm not monetizing it. I'm not really growing it. So maybe it's time for me to really invest in some help to help me get it there. And I was member number 2 of his Grow the Show Accelerator. And I keep telling him, like, I deserve spot number 1 because I was sold from the moment I saw that Facebook post. And I was sold before we got on the sales call. Like, I should have been member number 1. And the member number 1 actually signed up like right before me, like that day. And anyway, so I go on his container, and there's something that he teaches that is very specific, and he will talk about it in public. I'm not revealing any industry secrets, but he has an entire podcast episode about it, which is how to engage with people personally. And as I was going through those exercises of engaging with people personally, I start to discover something which blew my mind. It disappointed me, but it excited me too. It was that when I went back to look at the members who had joined my program in the Be Fun program all that year, this was at the end of towards the end of 2020, everybody who had joined my program, when I went back and asked them, how's the business going? I gave you your business in a box, right? You said you wanted your website. You said you wanted to figure out your business. We did that, and you loved it. And we went out on time, and you were super happy with it. What happened? How's the business going? And I was at the time looking for testimonials to launch it again. Mm-hmm. None of them had really gone anywhere with it. Yeah. And I was like, what happened? I had 1-star client in that program, like that studious person who was like there every day asking all the questions. She was the one that asked the questions for everybody in the group, right? And she was getting clients just out of doing the exercises I was giving her. So, and that was kind of weird. I kind of didn't think much of it at the time, but because I'm like, no, the goal is not to get clients. I'm not teaching you how to get clients. I'm teaching you the stuff you need to know to make the website. So no, okay, you're getting clients, but like, that doesn't matter, right? So I just kind of dismissed that. And I was so disappointed that none of them were really doing it. Their websites were kind of gathering dust. They were not promoting their services. And it just kind of hit me like a wrecking ball that my audience, people who are starting their entrepreneurial journey, their first step is not to get a website. That is not step 1. Yeah. And I looked back and I discovered that I had already figured out how to get clients, even though I had a very small audience. To this day, I have a small audience that we were just talking. I just hit 1,700 on my Instagram account. So I've never had a big audience, but I had already crossed the 6-figure mark, and I was consistently getting clients. And then that's when it started to make sense. I'm like, wait, my clients were getting clients in my program by doing the things that I was telling them to do. And that wasn't even my goal. Like, that's how easy getting clients was for me, right? That I could teach it without even teaching it. And they were getting the results without even me wanting. So the combination of learning how to do that personal engagement with people, plus this realization that my people don't need a website to start with. What they need is clients. They need to get that practice. They need to go out there and help people. They're not just marketers. They're not a walking marketing department. They need to be doing their coaching. They need to serve. So I took that engagement piece and I took that getting clients piece and I kind of put them together. And I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? What do I do with this? So I started creating a little bit of a container at the time, because my podcast is called The Global Phenomenon. I called this container the Global Masters membership, right? Which I thought was cute, right? It's well branded, right? So I created the Global Masters membership where I said, okay, who wants to learn what it really takes to start your business? And I got like 40 people in. And I'm like, okay, let me teach you. And as I'm teaching them and telling them to go back and do the things that I was asking my BFAN members to do, the framework started to develop. And then it became really clear that just for marketing purposes, I could not continue to call this the Global Masters membership because it doesn't mean anything. And I've heard you talk about this specifically for podcast names, right? It's like it's something can be really cutesy, but like if people don't get it, then what is it for?
What's the point, right?
It's the same with program names. So the Global Masters didn't mean anything. So that's when I brainstormed and I changed it to, okay, it's going to be called Get Clients First. And it's so funny because I just had a one-on-one meeting with a client yesterday who just signed up for Get Clients First, and he came as a referral. And he told me, actually, when you say get clients first, I actually don't know what you mean. First refers to what? Before what? Like, what is that first for? And because he came as a referral, he was not familiar with my content. I'm like, oh, well, let me explain it to you. Oh, my whole thing is stop trying to grow your audience. Start getting clients first. Growing your audience, it comes a little bit later, right? Once you figure out how to get clients from the audience you already have, validating your idea, really starting to help people, then imagine the power of growing that audience and getting more clients from it. But trying to grow the audience first is just shooting yourself in the foot. So I don't remember your question, but now
you answered it though, and then you answered it and you took me to where I was going, right? So it's so funny, as podcasters, we already kind of know automatically, okay, where's this question going? Let me take you there. But I love the concept that you have, right? Get the client first. Worry about all this crap that everybody else is talking about later, right? And so when I talk about, like, I work with entrepreneurs who want to grow their impact in order to grow their income. Growing your impact doesn't mean you have more followers on social media. That means you're more clear on your message. That means you go deeper with the people that are following you. And even in the podcast space, I talk about how 80% of shows are doing less than 100 downloads an episode. And people, when I tell people that, they immediately go, I don't want to start a podcast, then what's the point? And I go, first of all, if you were a public speaker and you had a room full of 100 people every single week, would you show up? The answer is yes, right? The answer would never, ever, ever be no. So why is it not enough in the podcast space?
Yeah.
But if you go deep enough with them, if you give them what they want, they will become clients, right? And then in the end of the day, what keeps the doors open, what keeps the business running? Money. And you have to have people pay you money, right? So you talk about this niche market of, I guess it's not even a niche market. People without followers wanting to become entrepreneurs. It's actually a massive group of people.
Right.
Because here's the reality of a big audience. I know people personally with millions of followers on social media, millions. They run affiliate programs and make no money.
Yeah.
It means their audience is not engaged. They're not talking to their audience correctly. So tell us a little bit about this concept of, like, not necessarily having an audience, but able to, I mean, you hit 6 figures before you hit 1,000 followers. Am I right?
Yes.
I'm right? Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that process, because I think that's intriguing to so many people when you position it that way.
Yeah. So I want you to think before the internet. How were people doing? How were people doing their business? You didn't have to have 1,000 people know who you were or know about your business for you to have a thriving business, right? It was just not a necessity. Now with the online world, this is like the only thing we know. And what we see is people who are successful. Those are the ones that bubble to the top. Those are the ones that are getting, hammered into our feeds, and like those are people we see. So we start to learn the wrong lesson. We start to learn that, well, if I want to make money, then I'm gonna have to grow my audience first. And I'm gonna tell you, this is a concept that is so hard to explain, because everybody wants a big audience. I want a big audience. I wrote an email to my audience, I think it was like last week, with the subject line, I want 100,000 followers tomorrow, like right now. I want them. So when you start from that basic want of like wanting to be seen, of wanting your efforts to not go for nothing, right? Then audience growth seems to be like the first thing. But it's still hard to explain. I was just telling you about an epic coaching call that I had with my clients just before this, where one of my clients was telling me she's going through my process and she's still kind of hung up on it. And she's telling me, but Ina, how can I even start engaging with people if I don't even know if I'm attracting the right person? So I feel like I need to fix my attraction first. I need to make sure that I'm attracting the right people, and then I'll engage with them and turn them into clients. I'm like, well, then you're not getting clients first, you're getting clients second, right? So after I explained, she's like, okay, now I understand it. And this is what I was trying to convey to her, and she got it. It is the fact that when you don't have a big audience, your network is your audience. My very first getting out there and trying to get just people on a market research call, right? It was just seeing, okay, who of the people who are watching me right now, what do you need? How can I help you? And I needed to find that, and I needed to create a list, like write down a list of 10 people that I knew that I feel like I could help. And then just tap them on the shoulder and be like, do you need help with this? Like, is this a thing for you? But it started with people that I knew. And that's something that makes us really squeamish. Like, because I don't want to go knocking on my grandma's door and making her buy something from me. But that's really not how it is. My own cousin has bought from me, right? Like my own cousin, she had been following my content. She knew what I did. In fact, she was kind of like almost like my unofficial quality assurance person on my podcast. I once published an episode that was completely blank for the first like 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
She's the one that told me, she's like, did you? And I'm like, no, what happened? Right. And I republished it. She was really paying attention. And one day she's like, I think I need your help. Can we like figure out a few sessions? So people out there need help. You're not trying, and I'm putting this on like on quotes, you're not trying to sell them something. You are offering something that people need. You just need to find who are those people who need it, right? So I don't feel squeamish about talking about my stuff all day long to people who are right here following me, right? And going out there and saying like, who can help me with this, right? Like, can I pick your brain? Anything I can do to help, right? So when it comes to, because your original question was, okay, so how do you go about doing this? How do you monetize if you don't have the big audience? It's knowing the people who are there, like actually finding out their stories and why they're there. Why are they following you? Some people will follow you like your grandma. Some people will follow you and like your post and comment congratulations because they want to support you. Not everybody who's hitting like on my post is a potential client. So you bet I'm not going out there saying, okay, who hit heart on my post and let me send them a DM to see if they want to join my program. It doesn't work that way. And we all get messages like that all the time, right? It's like, hey, I saw that you're a coach. I have this amazing program and I think it's going to help you grow your business, right? And I'm like, how do you know my business is not growing already? Like, you don't know because we've never talked. You don't know anything. Yeah. So that's my first thing is, if you don't know the stories of your followers, then you don't know anything. And fat chance you're going to be able to get clients from them because you're still kind of relying on that, well, strangers are the only ones that count thing that we have, right? Like I get this all the time. Somebody's like, somebody signed up to be my client, but it's somebody that I already knew. I'm like, why is that a but?
Yeah, why is that a but?
Why is it that we only count strangers? Like our marketing is only working if strangers are responding to it. That's not the case. It's people who are there who know, like, and trust you. Everybody knows that, the know, like, and trust factor. And when you're starting, most of the time it's people who already know, like, and trust you. And that's going to be people that you already know.
100%. And, it's so interesting because this takes me back to like the beginning stages of my podcast life and trying to grow. My goal was I want to grow an audience and I want to do events and I want to bring people in and I want to speak on stages. And the reality came to, I had to say to myself, well, the people that are now following me, what do they really want? And for the longest time, I was avoiding being the podcast guy, right? Like I was like, I don't want to talk about microphones. I don't want, and by the way, I still don't like talking about microphones. It doesn't matter, right? But the reality is that's what they wanted at first. And that was the first business I built that made money was based on podcasting. Cause I was like, oh, well, this is what they want. I can help them. So I'm going to help them. And they paid me to do it. Right. And the more I did it, the better I got, the more they paid me. And it just continued to grow. Now I still own that business. I still own that podcast business. But there's now my big vision has come to fruition as things have grown. Like you said, right? Like you start on serving your audience and it's going to grow over time and things are going to shift and evolve over time as well, right? Like you're going to gain new tools, new tactics, new messaging, and that's going to attract different people who go, okay, I like this. Now you go, okay, now I want to serve you. And that's all it is. It's such an important thing to say, just ask what people want. And hopefully you're the expert. They're following you for a reason.
And I love it that you said that your offers are going to continue to evolve, right? Which is why things were not working out with my clients who got the website as their first step because their offers hadn't even been tested. They had never actually served those people, so they were not even sure that's exactly what they wanted to do. At the time, you're so excited about starting a business that you think you have a brilliant idea, right? I had a brilliant idea. When I quit my job, I was like, oh, I know. I'm going to teach new moms how to make WordPress websites so that they can have a side business and they can quit their jobs eventually and they can stay home with the kids while they make some money. Why? Because that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what I did. And I actually my business coach at the time, she told me, why don't you go ask them if that's what they want? And I did my market research. I went and I asked them, is this something you're interested in? And it turned out exactly 0 of them wanted to learn how to make websites, but 100% of them wanted to do something. They all wanted to do something else. And I couldn't wrap my head around how to help them because everybody wanted to do something different. One wanted to start a gym, like for kids, like a trampoline kind of park. Another one wanted to start like a restaurant or a food truck. Another one wanted to make like bedazzled t-shirts. I'm like, I have no idea how to help any of you. So you know what I'm going to do? Ignore everything you all said, and I'm going to create an online course to teach moms how to create WordPress sites. So guess how many people bought my course that I spent 6 months creating and launching and spending money on ads to launch? I sold 4 copies, all discounted, and I never talked about that course again, right? So we got to realize that I don't know why there's this rush in our first year to get to the 10K months, right? I need to do this now. I need to figure out what that big offer is so that I can go viral, so that my life can be set and I can live life like it's a permanent vacation, right? Like, but that's not how it works. Things take time. I feel like after I got my first year under my belt and I started to really experiment with, okay, business coaching. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm a business coach now. Like, what even is that? And started experimenting with, okay, what if I do business coaching without offering the website? And then I started to feel really bad because I would see my clients struggle through the tech. And I'm like, I can't watch it. It's like nails on a chalkboard, watching somebody like, and I'm like, let me just help you. I know CSS. I can just code this for you and make it look right. Like, I'm like, okay, so I can't do this without the website. And that's when it started forming into Be Found. After Be Found, I just told you the story that turned into the Global Masters, which turned into Get Clients First. And I've been selling Get Clients First for a couple of years. And now I feel like I'm in such a great spot, but it's not like I quit my job and immediately I said, I think somebody should be talking to small audience entrepreneurs how to get clients. It would have been impossible. I just told you, going to Podcast Movement, it was the thing that sped up the process of me getting here. If I hadn't gone, I would have evolved in some other way, but I wouldn't be here. So I feel like after that first year, I was able to calm down a little bit. I mean, like, oh, I get it. things take years. Things are going to continue to change. I'm like, okay, then we'll see where this goes. And I still don't know where I'm going to end up. Is this the last thing I'm ever going to talk about for the rest of my life?
I'm going to tell you this: when you get to 100,000 followers on social media, because I believe you'll get there. Maybe not by the end of today, but I believe you'll get there. You can't teach people how to sell make 6 figures with a small audience. Like, there are people going to be like, "You have 120,000 followers. What are you talking about, lady?"
I'm going to tell you something that is one of my biggest fears. Is that because I believe that the two thoughts have nothing to do with each other. I believe that I can teach 100,000 people how to get clients with a small audience, right? And that should have nothing to do with how many followers I actually have. But my biggest fear here is to lose that relatability factor, right? That people are going to look at me and be like, why am I listening to her? She clearly has 100,000 followers. So why am I? So it's a matter of, I guess, trying to differentiate those two things. The strategies that I ask small entrepreneurs to do are not the same strategies that a large audience entrepreneur would follow. So at that level, I'm probably going to be adopting completely different strategies. Now, am I going to feel like, okay, I should probably add a new offer to teach people who have a large audience how to monetize it? Maybe. But it's my biggest fear that, okay, what if I grow my audience? And speaking of limiting beliefs and all of that, which I know you're very familiar with the concept, that has been one of my limiting beliefs forever. And it could account for the fact that I still have a small audience. It is very possible that I'm subconsciously self-sabotaging to stay small because I'm afraid that a large audience is going to mean all these things and I'm not going to be able to handle it. So there's a big one for you.
That is a big one. And when you think about that, 100%, because that's exactly where my mind went, which is why I brought it up. Like, hey, when you get to a large audience, people are going to go, hold on, lady. Like, I didn't know you back then. I might not believe you now. Like, that's just crazy stuff. But I think the reality is your tactic in gaining these clients, as long as that doesn't change,
right,
then you can continue to teach it. It's the same tactic, right? Like, even if you have 120,000 people, you're able to approach it in the similar way, right? So talk a little bit about your tactic, because I know you're in your DMs a lot. I know you're doing all that stuff. Tell us a little bit about, without giving away the farm, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I do want to say, though, that I'm not sure that I agree. I think that I would be using large audience strategies to get clients once I have a big audience. It's because it's just a matter of fact. I don't believe that I have to be using a particular strategy to teach it, right? Because I've been there, I know that it works, I have validated it, and I can teach a certain strategy even if I'm at a different stage than people. So to get into your question of how I teach this stuff, what is the secret sauce? I have a 3-stage process. So inside Get Clients First, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. My offer is in stage 3. And I'm still able to teach my stage 1 clients to follow the stage 1 process, even if I'm not following it myself, because I've already been there and I already cleared that stage. Right. So I really believe that I can teach this and move on to other strategies. The question is if my offers are going to change to start teaching the things that I'm also doing. But I don't think that it would be very helpful to stage 1 people if I'm teaching only stage 5 things. You know what I mean? So the stages have to stay and they have to understand that. And you're just tapping into my biggest fears. So yay. I don't have all the answers for it. I just can only imagine. So here's the strategy. Stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 is where you go and validate your offer. All I want you to do in stage 1 is to meet one person who's your ideal client, and they have to be an ideal client, and get them to pay something for the offer that is perfect for them. You do not clear this stage if you're doing a trade. You do not clear this stage if you're giving it away for free. You do not clear this stage if it turns out that that person wasn't your ideal client. The only way to clear this stage is to actually meet and get somebody who's your ideal client to give you money for the offer. How much money it is, I almost don't even care at this stage. This is not the stage where you're going to be doing the math to see, well, I should probably sell it for this much if I want to get this many people in, and this is how I'm going to replace my salary. This is not when you do that math. Right. This is purely about, does somebody who needs this want it bad enough to spend money on it? Period. Because I'm going to tell you, somebody who doesn't value it will not give you $1. So the price almost doesn't even matter at this stage. Okay.
I love that. Yeah.
So, and this is like one that we have to like deal with the whole mindset thing, because I know there's many business coaches out there who are speaking to people who are at different stages, right? And that, I think that's the biggest problem with us as consumers of education, is that we are not always aware of who that person's ideal client is. So we are here hearing the advice that may be targeted at somebody else, but we think, well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Let me jump on that one, right? So when business coaches go out there and say, hey, don't undervalue yourself, okay? Charge the fair price for your services. They're not talking to the person who has never sold a single thing in their life. Right. They're not. They're talking to people who are selling something, they're undervaluing it, and they're encouraging them, hey, it's okay to raise your prices. It's safe over here. And many people need to hear that message. But the people that I talk to who are just starting out, they have that in their brain. No, wait, I need to charge my fair price. What is your fair price? Yeah, you have never sold this before, right? You've never had that validation before. So that's a big mindset hurdle we have to get over in that stage one. It's like, ideal client is the only thing I care about. Ready to move on to stage two?
We're ready.
Okay. Stage two is my favorite stage. My favorite stage. And I have stayed in stage two forever because it's my favorite stage. And that is to develop and test and try to create a reliable sales engine. Now, this is my project management background.
Yeah, this is the stage I would hate.
No, this is my, oh my God, this is my sweet spot. Because as a project manager, I spent 15 years in corporate being a project manager for software projects, right? So the way my mind works is in steps. I am not going to go through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if I don't know what the final outcome is. What is the point? So I feel like a lot of us are just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what works, when in reality, there is a process. Like, you can test enough to come up with those 5 steps and to be able to say to yourself, to convince yourself, anytime that I go through these 5 steps, I get clients. So that's what we do in stage 2. It's like, okay, we're not just going to get one client. You're going to do this over and over and over again until you know what that list of steps is, so that you can say confidently, I know how to get clients. Yeah. All I have to do is follow steps 1 through 5. Okay. So that is stage 2. And it's my favorite because stage 3 is the scary one for me, right? Because stage 3 is the audience growth stage, right? Which I'm still trying to crack that nut, right? I tell people the reason I teach how to get clients with a small audience is because I suck growing an audience.
By the way, I'm going to challenge you by you saying this, as your TikTok is beginning to really grow, your Instagram is really growing. Like, that's the reality. So this is a story that you're saying in your head of like, I suck at growing an audience. Here's the thing. Most people don't have 1,500 followers. We're comparing ourselves to people with 1 million followers. Right. By the way, most of them pay for them. And the reality is, like, when you have 1,500, 2,000 followers, you're better than a majority of the people on the internet. And so you growing an audience, and I've seen, since I've met you, and it hasn't even been that long, your audience has grown, specifically on TikTok.
Yes, TikTok has been a fun one because it's a completely different culture than Instagram. Yes. I tried going live on TikTok. So I finally hit like 1,000 followers on TikTok. I tried going live there in the same way that I go live on Instagram. It doesn't work. It's like, it's a very, very specific
I don't have enough followers on TikTok to even go live. So you beat me there.
That was very, very like intentional. Like, I'm going to be posting multiple times a day. There was one day when I posted like 6 times in one day on TikTok. Like, it was like insane. I was like,
that is insane.
I'm just going to throw everything at it. And yeah, finally I got to go live, and it's just not the same culture at all. But to what you were saying, limiting beliefs. It's a thing. We all have them. They're
Very
all
real.
there. So I will stay in stage 2 forever because I can continue to get clients and have a healthy business and pay down my debt, the one that I incurred, like the one that I accrued over the first 3 years of my business. I can pay all that down if I just stay in my comfort zone right here in stage 2. But now I'm like, okay, I'm in stage 3. Deep breath, TikTok, Instagram. I'm going to start experimenting with ads for the first time in 4 years, right? I've
Wow.
not
Yeah.
done ads all this time. So it's time to get out of my comfort zone a little bit, but wish me luck.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for you because I think you're going to see exponential growth, and I feel like when we get into those uncomfortable moments, that's when we see massive growth in our life, personally and professionally, because that's when growth happens. When we're uncomfortable, you have to embrace it, which you truly are. You're doing it. I mean, the amount of FaceTime you have on your Instagram blows me away. Like, you're so good at it, and I believe you continuing to do that, you're going to continue to grow without a doubt. Now, obviously, unfortunately, look, I could go another hour with you. I do have a hard stop in 8 minutes.
Oh,
And so everybody listening, they're gonna be like, oh my God, you got to have her back. And we will. And we'll go
yay.
deeper. We'll go talk about other topics. We'll do all these things, but I want to make sure that I get to the 2 questions that I ask every single person on the show. So the first one is, it's a 2-part question. First part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah. Definition of success, I'm going to be just totally honest with you, is every day that I didn't give up. To me, like, I wake up every day and I'm like, the fact that I'm still doing this, the fact that I'm still showing up. Like, yesterday was a crazy day. It was my son's 5th birthday, and I'm so behind on getting back to my DMs, and I'm so behind on emails, and I'm so behind on everything. I'm like, but I did just a little bit yesterday, and I did a little bit today, and I'm showing up here, being here today. So every day that I'm just taking a step and I'm not giving up is a success for me. I could do this for the rest of my life and be like, I was fine. I did everything that I could.
I love
So,
it.
3 things to ensure my success every day. I'm gonna start with a daily date with my husband.
That's big.
It's huge. When I had my second baby and I quit my job, I kind of rationalize that my husband works during the day while I'm with the baby. So when he comes back from work, he will have the baby and I'm just going to retreat to my office and do my work, right? And I would go live on Facebook and I would do all of these things and I would not get out of there until 11 or 12 at night, right? And after a couple months of this, things with my husband started to change. And I'm like, what's happening? What is wrong? Like, you're tense, what is happening? And he expressed this in the best way that he could, which was like doing his little tantrum. But what it really came down to was he missed me.
Mm,
And he couldn't put it into words because it's just not how his brain works. He
sure.
couldn't tell me that he missed me, but that's what he was doing, like acting out. I'm like, you miss me. Your time with me matters to you. And that is so wonderful to know. So it took me those 2 months to really realize it and to realize my relationship with my husband is the tip of the priority waterfall. If
Mm,
that starts to crumble, nothing else is going to work. So
right.
every night we get together for dinner in front of a show. My husband and I are extremely different people. We often have very hard time finding something that we both like to watch together. But we know that when we watch, I feel free and he feels free to pause the show at any time and turn to the other and say something that is on our mind. And none of us really go like, oh, you're pausing the show again. Let me watch this. It's like we listen. That's our time. So I
Yeah.
can pause and be like, can I just tell you something that I just haven't been able to tell anybody else? And we get to talk and he listens and I listen. And it's the best time. Date nights with my husband every single night. Number 2, relaxing into failure. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I know myself. I'm a kick-ass person. So I can't be that hard on myself. I know that I kick ass every day. So if a day I didn't have a kick ass day, I'm like, it's okay, because a kick ass person had a slow day, had a bad day, had a whatever day. That's okay. Kick-ass person is still a kick-ass person. So to relax into those points of failure and be like, I did my best. My best is usually like anybody else's 250%, right? So relax into it. You're fine. Trust yourself, or trust myself. And then number 3 thing that I do, I show up in stories on Instagram. And I'm going to come out and confess, it's not all for the marketing purposes. It's not all for the audience. It's not all for the clients. I actually have, I'm a big extrovert and I need people. I can't stand the silence of an empty room. It gives me anxiety. So I assure you, as soon as we're done with this conversation, I'm going to be here alone in this room. And the first thing I'm going to do is grab my phone and record a story about it, because I cannot stand the silence. So that has kind of played to my advantage, because it allows me to show up on stories a lot more than other people
And I'm the opposite. I'm an introvert, and I always thought I was an extrovert till I lived with my fiance and her 2 children, and I realized that I recharge alone. And so that's why I don't show up as often on Instagram stories and reels and all these other things that allows interaction, because my recharge is totally alone. But I love that about you, because you can be so out there and so outgoing. So that's great. So before I get to the last question, real quick, let's get to the important things. Where do people find you? How can they sign up for your course? What's all the good stuff?
All right. So everybody should just go and follow the podcast. It's called The Global Phenomenon, and it's about the online coaching industry. I interview the top entrepreneurs out there, the top coaches out there. Mr. Schenck was actually episode number 123, 123. I'll never forget that. Go and listen to that episode. All about online coaching. I also get to teach all of the stuff we're talking about. I teach about it. I have 2 episodes per week, 1 interview, 1 teaching. So go and learn about that. And definitely go and follow me on Instagram at Your Engagement Coach. And as for my program, Get Clients First, if it intrigues you, go to joingetclientsfirst.com and just read up about it. There's a big FAQ and see if it's right for you. But that's where we are. Thank you for asking.
No, of course. I love it. And look, I support everything that you're doing. So guys, if you're listening, go ahead, sign up for all that stuff. Go for it. I mean, it's a massively great first step. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question, since the show is called The Growth Now Movement. That question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
I hate to say something that everybody says, but just having children. I mean, I feel like with the anonymous questions that you post and the anonymous answers that I post, like, and the anonymous questions that I do on Instagram, like, we've gotten to know each other at a completely different level. So I've been able to share some of this stuff with you, but just having gone through having them, like physically going through having them, and just knowing that if I can do that, I can do anything. So I think this applies to everybody, even if you don't have kids. Anything that allows you to put yourself out there in a way that completely is out of your comfort zone, that you've never done before, that just shows you, if I can do this, then I can do that other thing. So that's what I'm going to say. My answer is, Mike, it's just completely untapped everything I can do.
Look, there's a reason that a lot of people say that. It is a massive undertaking. It teaches you so much. There's so much that you learn from being a parent. So don't apologize for saying an answer that many people say, because it's a huge one. Like, I know people who've been through some stuff, and that's their answer, and you're just like, wow, okay, it all makes sense. I don't have my own kids, but I've learned a lot of lessons through the bonus dad thing. So for sure. But this has been amazing. 100% to you and everybody listening. You're coming back on the show, because there's so much more we could have done here.
Awesome.
But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. It's been a real pleasure.